Why is Jungkook avoiding Jimin's gaze? Why did Jimin suddenly look down when the camera panned them? Two friends who were once inseparable now stand at an invisible distance. Is this just post-draft awkwardness, or is there something bigger going on behind the scenes? ARMY, get ready because what we found will change the way you see both forever. Why do Jungkook and Jimin look awkward? This is what happens behind the camera. Do you feel anything strange? Did you also see how Jimin held back a smile when Jungkook glanced at him, only to then stare at the ground as if hiding something? And did you also realize that for the first time in a long time, there were no hugs, no warm interactions, no jokes between two friends who for years were considered inseparable by the ARMY? Why is the atmosphere suddenly so cold when this is the most anticipated moment Jungkook and Jimin's return from military service? Is it true that this is just an awkward feeling after not meeting in front of the camera for a long time? Or is there actually another story that has been deliberately not shown? A short video showed Jungkook standing on one side of the stage with a face that seemed to hold thousands of unspoken words. Jimin, standing not far from her, just took a quick glance and lowered his head again. There were no small gestures like before, no soft pat on the back, no typical hyung murmur from Jungkook that usually sounded affectionate, not even sincere eye contact like before. Is this just the ARMY's feeling, or has something changed? The sensitive ARMY immediately felt tension. Comments on social media began to appear. Why do they look so stiff? Usually Jimin immediately embraces Jungkook. What is this? Do you have time problems in the military? Being a hot topic that continues to flood the virtual universe. And behind that strange silence, an internal source begins to leak things that have never been revealed to the public. According to the narrative that began to develop from the staff who accompanied them during their training and transition out of the military, the interaction between Jungkook and Jimin had undergone drastic changes in recent months. Not because of resentment, not because of open conflict, but because of something more complicated. Buried misunderstandings, broken promises, and emotional moments that leave scars. It all started from a small incident in the barracks. Jungkook, who is usually cheerful and open, begins to withdraw. Some colleagues said that he often looked pensive, wrote something in his little book, then quickly hid it when others approached. And in one of those moments, Jimin saw Jungkook's handwriting. Not intentionally, but from that day on, they were different. What did Jungkook write? Is it about Jimin? Is it something his best friend shouldn't read? The answer to that question has never been officially revealed. But Jimin's reaction that night, a colleague said, was a painful silence. He left the room without saying anything. And from that night on, their communication began to change. Jimin became more silent, and Jungkook began to look like someone who was trying hard to fix something that was already hurting too deeply. But what made it all the more emotional was the fact that none of them revealed this to the public. They prefer to be silent, keep the image, protect each other from too sharp media attention. But the camera doesn't lie. That blank look, that restrained smile, even such a small gesture as taking a deep breath before speaking, everything hints that there is an unfinished emotional burden. So, why do they keep appearing together? Because behind everything, there is still love. There is still friendship. But there is also shame, uncertainty, and maybe guilt. In a brief interview recorded behind closed doors by a well-known entertainment industry journalist, Jungkook's voice is heard quietly saying, "I wish I could go back in time before all this got complicated." While Jimin, in another session, was seen almost shedding tears when he mentioned Jungkook's name, then said, "Sometimes, closeness can also hurt. It will touch the hearts of all who hear it." Are they really trying to repair their relationship? Or are they actually not ready to go back to the way they were before, because there are wounds that have not yet healed? All of this leads us to wonder, what does friendship really mean in the midst of career pressures, public expectations, and military rush? How can two people who were once home to each other suddenly become two worlds on each other's guard? Surprisingly, during their latest promotional photo session, the photographer said that Jimin refused to sit next to Jungkook, preferring a position at the end of the line. He said, "I'm afraid my expression is too honest," said the photographer, who asked to remain anonymous. The sentence is more than just a request for a seat. It was an inner scream. A recognition that behind all the forced smiles, there is an unfinished story. There is a restrained word, and there is a heart that is still learning to understand a taste that cannot always be expressed. Did Jimin protecting himself? Or is it just giving Jungkook space to understand his feelings? And what about Jungkook? The man who is usually the most expressive is now precisely the most silent. When asked about Jimin, he only briefly replied, "We need time."
No clarification, no rebuttal.
Just 2 words actually provoke more questions than answers. Then came another clue. A handwritten letter was found in a special army merchandise that was limited in circulation. The letter was written by Jungkook and contained sentences that make the hair stand on end. Sometimes, the most painful thing is not because you were hurt, but because you can't tell the truth to the person you love the most. Is it intended for Jimin? One thing is for sure, all this is not about hate. It's not about revenge. It's about 2 people who love each other, but are trapped in silence and emotional wounds that they can't heal in one night. Now we're all waiting. Not just to see them laugh and joke like they used to, but to see if they can get through this time stronger. Will they be able to erase that invisible distance and again find their most honest version? Because perhaps behind that awkwardness lies a deeper love than we can imagine. And if it were true that something had happened behind the camera, an event that only the 2 of them knew and kept until now, would they be able to share it one day? Or will this story remain a secret behind fake smiles and the glare of stage lights that are too glare to leave wounds visible? Army, are you ready if the answer isn't what you expected? When the stage lights were turned off and the cameras stopped recording, who was the first to look down and look away? Who quietly takes a deep breath and walks away despite his heavy legs? And who stands still, allowing the shadow of the past to restrain his steps? Army always knew, not because they were told, but because they could feel. Many think that the love and friendship between BTS members is always perfect, never wavering, always solid without cracks. But is it really so? Will the relationship between humans, even though as strong as Jungkook and Jimin, be forever intact without ever experiencing a shock? While they were still in the military, internal sources say that there was one turning point. When Jimin secretly visited Jungkook, but did not meet him in person, a witness who was the liaison officer said, Jimin came with a hopeful face. But after standing in front of the door for almost 5 minutes, he turned and left.
I don't know why.
But the expression on his face at that time was like a person who refrained from collapsing. Why isn't Jimin in? Did he hear something that made him change his mind? Or did someone, perhaps Jungkook's associate, say something that made Jimin hesitate? Clues after clues began to appear, but they were all just pieces. No one knows the full extent. Some say that Jungkook experienced a lot of emotional stress during his training. He feels trapped in a role of golden magne who must always be strong, smile, and please everyone, even though in him, he holds an unimaginable burden. The burden of staying perfect. Burden to remain an inspiration. And the burden of still maintaining a relationship that may have already changed without him being able to prevent it. Jimin, on the other hand, is someone who is very sensitive to other people's mood swings. He feels Jungkook's transformation, but doesn't know how to break through the wall that his best friend is slowly building. Relationships that were once full of laughter are now turning into painful prudence. And when the 2 finally returned to the public, Army was greeted with a startling portrait. 2 men who once shared a warm stage with each other, now standing stiffly as if they had met for the first time. Is this just a phase? Many hoped so. But their expressions spoke deeper. In one short backstage clip, it appears Jin is trying to break the atmosphere. He patted Jungkook on the shoulder and said, "Come on, it's time to smile." But to my surprise, Jungkook just smiled a little, not the bright smile he used to give. He then glanced at Jimin and quickly turned his face away, and at that moment the camera caught Jimin's expression that was like holding his breath. The question is, what really happened between them? Armies around the world began to speculate. Some say they were involved in dissent during their military service, while others believe that there was a lingering sense of guilt, disappointment, or even disillusionment, a love that is never expressed. The latter theory split the public. There was one shocking confession from a former HYBE staffer who had worked closely with the 2 before they entered the military. But in reality, even before the camera recorded again, the awkwardness had been captured by someone who cared no less. Taehyung, he may seem busy with his own activities. But Army knows Taehyung isn't the type to turn a blind eye when two of the most important people in his life are drifting away from each other. A source from the BTS creative team said that Taehyung was silent for more than half an hour in the waiting room after seeing the first trailer of the promotional video that reunited Jimin and Jungkook. It doesn't say anything, but one staffer saw him clench his fists and looked down for a long time, then said quietly, "This is not the way." What does that phrase mean? Does Taehyung feel that something is wrong? Or does he know that there are things that should have been revealed a long time ago but have not been resolved? And even more surprising, after that first post-enlistment meeting, Taehyung invited RM to speak face-to-face in one of their old studio rooms. One of the sources said that the meeting lasted for almost 2 hours. The door is tightly closed. No recording. No other staff can enter. Only RM and Taehyung. After leaving, RM looked more gloomy than usual. He even refused to be interviewed by the media that had been scheduled in advance. When asked why, the manager simply said, "There is something that needs to be resolved within the group." The sentence shook. As this is the first time in years, a statement from HYB's internals implies there is a problem within BTS itself, not just an outside rumor, and this is where things get even more exciting. RM, the leader who has been known to be calm and wise, finally decides to write a letter that is not published to the media, but is placed secretly in the training room, and is known by the staff to be read by Jungkook the next day. It's not a long sentence. Only 2 lines. "If you still care, go see him. Don't let time replace the words you never had time to say." Jungkook did not immediately respond to the letter. But a cleaning staff member who was in the studio at the time said Jungkook sat alone for more than an hour with red eyes. That night, he did not return to the dorm. He also did not return to his home. He disappeared for a few hours, and even more surprising, Jimin also could not be contacted on the same night. Coincidence? The Army doesn't believe in coincidences. Some began to suspect that the two had finally met. Quietly, without a camera, without a manager, without anyone, just the two of them and all the burdens that were withheld for almost 2 years. What, then, are we talking about? We may never know for sure, but 2 days after the night of their disappearance, Jimin appeared on a short live broadcast. His face looked calmer, but his eyes were slightly puffy. He doesn't talk much, but he had said one sentence that made the whole army hold their breath. Sometimes, there are people who are too dear to us to be afraid to hurt them just by our own existence. Immediately, fans flooded the comments with one name, Jungkook. And sure enough, not long after that live, Jungkook posted an old photo. Not just any photo. It was a portrait of the two of them from 2017, sitting together backstage at a Japanese concert, leaning against each other, laughing innocently. The caption is just one word, when, that's not just a question. It was a lament, an unfulfilled desire. Jungkook seems to be taking Jimin back to that time. To a time when everything was still light, when there was no burden, there was no necessity to explain everything. When feelings are adequately conveyed through looks and laughter, not through questions that are never answered. But can time bring them back? Army began to dissect each of their subsequent appearances, hoping to find a glimmer of hope that the relationship was not completely lost. And while there was no hug, no warm greeting like there used to be, there was one touching moment. When Jimin accidentally dropped his mic and Jungkook, who was standing far enough away, reflexively ran to pick him up despite the staff being closer than he was. It wasn't a big stunt. But that's a big meaning to its instinct. The reaction of a sense that is already embedded in the body, not just the mind. Something that cannot be hidden even if words say otherwise. And when the mic was back in Jimin's hand, he just looked down for a moment, then nodded without a word. But Jungkook smiled a smile so faint, barely caught on camera, but enough to make Army believe that there was still something there. The question is, will they both be honest? Or will they continue to let time and awkwardness become a distance that slowly fades what they once built together? Taehyung once said in an old documentary, "Sometimes, we're too afraid of losing until we let distance save us." But distance never saves anything, it only delays the loss. And that sentence now sounds like a prophecy that is happening before our eyes, because if Jimin and Jungkook continue to